Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted and privileged to welcome a very, very senior corporate professional, a fellow YPO from Gurgaon, India, Mr. Sameer Nagpal. Sameer, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh, for having me on this platform.
Thank you. Sameer is the Managing Director and CEO of Dalmia-Bharat Refractories Limited. He, in 2019, received the CEO with HR Orientation title at the North India Employer Branding Awards. And as I mentioned, he's a fellow member of the YPO. So, Sameer, let's start with your own journey. Tell me a little bit about your journey and what have been some of your challenges and some of your learnings as you made it to the top.
Well, I think, first, life itself is an amazing journey.
Correct.
And I think I've enjoyed so far the way I've lived. But talking of professional journey, I don't know if I've reached the top yet, but I have definitely scaled many peaks. And, journey to each peak and then restarting for the next peak has been a very exciting experience. And, this is my fourth industry. And, I started with air conditioning, then moved on to electronic security, and then moved on to paints, and now currently in refractories. So every time I changed industry, I had to reset myself. I mean, I had to give away or let go of things which I thought I had mastered. And therefore, in a way, while I started probably at a little higher base, but it was, trying to climb another peak. And I think the challenges and the learnings which I encountered in these different journeys to the peaks have made my, the whole experience very interesting. And, in terms of challenges, there are many, but the one which I've encountered most frequently has been dealing with uncertainty. And I think that that challenge started even before I started to work. I remember when I was interviewing in campus after my engineering degree, I had a set thought of what I wanted to do. Technical, R&D, production, and I was very scared, having come from a middle class, small town, very unsure, very scared of sales and marketing, anything which put limelight on you. But for some reason, I flunked all the interviews, and that completely made the future look uncertain. I was one of the toppers, but suddenly I was faced with this uncertainty that will I have a job or not have a job. So at that point of time, I reset myself and I said, let me let go of things which I'm holding myself constrained with and become open. And I remember, that time when Career came to the campus and they had a multi-layered all India selection process, very complex. It had steps like extempore and group discussion, something which I would absolutely shiver to think about. And, went through that process, and, when they announced the list and I saw my name on the top of the list, it gave me I think that was my first high or a peak.
Wonderful.
And how to deal with uncertainty, started there. But even in the professional career, I've seen, it was, I think, in 2001, when, I've been with the company for 10 years, and suddenly, due to global change of strategy, Carrier said, we will shut down this business. The business was, we were doing central air conditioning projects. And they said, no, projects is not our business. We want to sell products. And, that was a big uncertainty for the team. Again, we went through this process of, letting go of whatever we believed in. And that, opened up new thoughts, new ideas, new chapters. And we ended up actually, I remember, partnering our competitor. And we created a totally new business model. And that business model was so successful. I mean, actually, the company Carrier, as it remains even today, is that business which got created during that uncertain phase. The rest of the business they sold out. So I think that has been the biggest challenge I've seen, and the learning has been you need to learn to let go. I mean, even during the COVID pandemic, which has been, I think, the biggest challenge in our everyone's life. I mean, in the current company in DBRL, we were doing a transformation journey, and suddenly it got disrupted. Our revenues dropped, and we kind of rebooted ourselves, and we set some, at that time, looked at absurd targets. But I can tell you, having realigned our purpose, we have been able to climb back, and we are now, we grew last year 55%. We are on track to grow 40%. So we suddenly are finding ourselves in a new domain.
Fantastic.
So I think that has been one big challenge which which I've faced. And I think the other challenges has been the it's been around people. So people, though they are the biggest asset, as we all know, but how do you align people, especially in uncertain times, or when your assignments are rapid growth, turnaround, and so that has been another big challenge. And my learning has been that creating a purpose to align people, is the way to go. So you create a purpose, you communicate, you enroll them, you align them, and that's how you are able to craft a new path.
Fascinating. And that's your response on people gives me a segue to my next question, which is, that you received the CEO with HR Orientation Award. Tell me about this award.
So I think the award was in recognition of what we were doing in our company, which is current DBRL. And it stems from my own belief of, I think CEO is more like a chief engagement officer. Its job is to engage all stakeholders, but especially employees.
Correct.
And also the role of the CEO is that of a conversation manager. And I have seen that organizations become what the conversation is within the organization. Right. So how do you kind of create that environment where you are engaging people, building new conversations, creating success stories? And I think the award kind of recognized what we were doing in our company, which is currently we are running a conversation called Writing a New Future. And this journey, as I said earlier, we began during pandemic. And this Writing a New Future has, opened our doors to a very different future than what we had thought, what we call default future we were looking at, some time back. So I think it's this whole space of how do you, carry people together. What this award was.
Fascinating. So, Samir, when I finished my business school, joined ITC, in those days, I'm talking of 1979, in those days, the HR leader was really either a personnel manager or an industrial relations manager. Today, that function has evolved into the role of a CHRO, who's become a very critical part of a CEO's team. I'd love to get your perspective on how has the role of the CHRO evolved over the years?
Well, if I look back on the experiences I've had in different companies, I agree with you. My first company, I think HR meant payroll management. And of course, industrial relation if you were in a plant.
Right.
And now I think the world has become far more complex and generations have changed. And this requires a different narrative in the organization to keep people engaged and aligned to your objective. Back then we didn't have the kind of disruptions or the communication channels we have today.
Correct.
So the whole world is available for you to look at from an information perspective. So therefore the people's behavior has changed, and therefore the role of CHRO, now called CHRO, is extremely critical. I think his role has two dimensions. One is understanding business, and second is creating alignment towards that objective of the business. And those, I've seen both successful and not so successful CHROs, and I think those who have been able to bring these two dimensions together are the ones who are really successful. And I also think, ultimately, CEO is the super CHRO of the company. I think he cannot delegate this responsibility to another person. He needs to enroll that person with him, but he drives the conversation.
Very interesting. My next question to you, Samir, is, and we're just coming out of the pandemic. People have got used to partial work from home, partial, coming into office, and so on and so forth. And then there is this whole thing across the world, which is the Great Resignation. I'd love to get your perspective on what is happening in our companies in India.
So I think, this Great Resignation primarily is a term which is more applicable to the Western world. Of course, there is a much higher level of attrition we are seeing in India too. And some sectors like IT, much more than others like, highly industrial segments. Having spoken to many people who have changed jobs and, suddenly become different than what they were before the pandemic, I think two things have happened. One is that having come so, let me say, face to face with death, especially in India when it happened in the second wave, a lot of people have started questioning their objectives in life, their purpose in life. And when they find that what they're doing does not align with their purpose, they are trying to, redefine their objectives, and therefore leading to sabbaticals or change. Maybe this is not my purpose, I should be doing that. Second thing I've seen is that some people have said, my God, if life is so short or unpredictable, I want to achieve as much as possible in as short time as possible. And therefore, for them, money has become primary objective.
Right.
So they are leaving for money. Whichever gives me money, it doesn't matter other things. So these are the two things I observe in India.
Okay.
We are grappling with the attrition.
Okay, wonderful. And given the fact that we are now coming out of the pandemic and people are used to work from home and people have got a lot of realizations, if you as the leader of a large company were to build a team today, what would you look for in people?
See, I think what I will look for has probably not changed from then to now, but it has got reinforced. So what I look for when I build a team, when I hire people, I look at intention. What is the intention of their joining me or the team or the company? When I find that there is alignment in their intention, our values and our purpose or objective, then I think people are a great fit. When the intention is mismatched, is when it is short-term, short-lived. So I think this I find as the most credible filter for myself when I hire, when I build team. And I do conduct sessions within my group, talk to my leaders to see if they do the same when they hire.
Very interesting. So Samir, now let me move to another segment. And given the fact that you work with 4 different businesses, I have often seen that when organizations become very large, they're no longer nimble. So my question to you is, what do the old traditional companies need to do to be able to adapt to the new market dynamics that are taking place in our country?
Well, I think, old companies have broadly many, but 2 broad issues. One is there is something which has set into the organization, which is a belief system. And that belief system has made them successful in the past, and therefore there is a tendency to continue. But when market dynamics has changed, you need to adapt or change your approach. And I think, so that is one. Second is, I think, the leader. How nimble is the leader? How nimble is he in or her in their minds? And I think people who have agility are able to also find ways of navigating their organization. We have some great examples in India, Reliance being one of them. Large, but I think it has demonstrated that its nimbleness and it has transformed itself. I have led organizations, including this one, where it's a 60, 70-year-old organization in a very industrial area, and believed, that it has a belief system that we are the best. And when the dynamics changes and a lot of multinationals come in, and suddenly you find that, the ground has shifted, how do you change the mindset of the company? And that is where the conversations become important. So how do you create a new narrative to align people to a different thought process? So I think it's a mix of leader and changing the narrative in the company.
Fascinating. Great response. Thank you. The other question that I have is that traditional businesses over the last 100 years or 50 years or 70 years have built huge assets, but have low valuations. On the other hand, here come these young, graduates from IITs and so on. They are setting up a technology company based on, the digital technology available, and suddenly the valuations are completely out of line with what the traditional businesses have. I'd love to get your perspective on what is happening in this area.
So I think, of course, this evolution of internet and digital has opened up new business models to create new value for the customers. But let's look at valuation. Valuation is your estimate or your expectation of the future profits of the company.
Correct.
That's how you get valuation. And there are, because the brick and mortar companies have existed for a very long time, there are more predictable models, there is more history, there is more pattern to how a valuation can be done. But when you come to digital, the space is very new, and the modeling is is evolving. Also, in a digital space, the pace of growth is very different. What is possible? Now, the question is whether that rapid pace of growth, which is not possible in a brick and mortar company, is going to yield profitability and therefore valuation. That is where the haziness resides. But I think also valuation is in the, it's like beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder.
Correct.
So some people are risk taker, they want to believe, and therefore, so sometimes it works. We have seen Amazon, Facebook. Sometimes it doesn't. We have seen Paytm at this point of time, of course, change.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to continue to evolve like this, still more predictable models around digital companies.
Which leads me to the next question for you, Samir, which is that there is a lot of debate on valuation and pricing of companies. Who, in your opinion, knows how to price it better? People who are the venture capitalists or the private equity funds or the stock market?
Well, I think venture capitalists and stock market probably value different, parts of the life of the company. Venture capitalists come much earlier. They're more focused. They are taking a larger bet. They're more. They have less history of the company and more predictive or future modeling. And so there, I think, is more of a belief in their own, or conviction in their own model, and therefore they value it in that manner. Eventually, they know they are not going to keep the company forever, and therefore they are also sometimes over optimistic or presented as an over optimistic picture. Now, when the company goes to stock market, which is by the time you have a more diverse shareholding. So now the valuation is not determined by few, but very variety of different people who are operating in the stock market. Funds could be some aggressive investors, some retail investors, passive funds, and therefore the valuation gets moderated to that extent. So I think both do a good job in their own space.
Very interesting. So now let me move to a few questions for you personally. Let me ask you a question coming back to your own life and your career. What would you say are 3 key milestones in your life or your career?
See, I'll talk about my career. Life is complex. So I think the first milestone I consider, which I spoke about earlier, which was getting into career. Because at that point of time, it made me change myself.
Correct.
I was forced to change. So I learned this very, very important skill of letting go. And of course, it is very important also in life. We hold so many things in relationships, in many aspects of our life, which hold us back, which limit our potential. So letting go of success, letting go of, because it builds ego, letting go of failure because it creates doubt. So I think career, that whole entry into career was a milestone. I think the second milestone I will consider is when I took the assignment of Shalimar Paints. It was my first public listed CEO MD assignment. It gave me a lot of learning opportunities in the financial world, in the media world, in shareholders. How do you position? How do you answer? It also gave me a lot of, let me say, public image. So it did give me that part of the high also, along with the learnings. And the third, I would say, is in this company, the company, when I joined, shareholders were not sure to keep, to sell, etc. And we developed and made the company that there came a time when we had an opportunity to acquire a company in Germany. Having come from a mindset, sometimes of most people, sometimes because of the old pre-independence mindset, and how you look at foreigners and color of the skin, and this whole decision of going for that acquisition, which had a plant and people, and I think was a very, very important milestone. And we developed that courage to make it happen. And so I think I would say these are three key milestones.
Fantastic. And my last question to you, Samir, and this is for the many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your vast experience and all your successes, what would you say are three lessons you want our viewers to take away from your journey and from our conversation?
See, I think first is that I believe we are all born CEOs. We are CEOs of our life. So first of all, we should believe in ourselves. Every person should believe in themselves. I think when you take that as a starting point, you have a very different journey. Second, which I've said, I'm repeat, and maybe I will add a fourth one later.
Sure.
Learning to let go.
We
are in a constantly changing world. We cannot be stuck to what we have learned in the past.
Correct.
And the pace of change is only increasing. So learning to let go is an extremely important, skill people should develop.
Right.
Third, I would say is, mastering the use of language. Language is very important on how you influence people, align them to your objectives. So therefore, talking futuristic language. We have all seen how Mr. Modi uses language extremely efficiently. And fourth, I would say, take risks. There is a reward-risk ratio in life, and it always works. And not most people are afraid and they don't do it. I will encourage them to take. And I think I will add one more. It just comes to my mind. As you grow in your professional career, as you become senior, you get towards the top, you get more lonely. And leading a business from the top, where you might feel lonely, is like, I often think business is like a war. Not exactly, but and you are the commander and you are lonely. So I always think that the leader is like a Krishna. It's like a Arjun, and Arjun has doubts, and you need your Krishna. So what I mean is, you need a coach, you need a mentor. Always have a mentor in your life. I mean, that could be your manager, your boss. I have been very lucky in that space. So these are the thoughts that come to my mind.
Wonderful, wonderful. Samir, on that note, and your 5 amazing lessons: believe in yourself, learn to let go, master your language to communicate better, take risks, and find your Krishna, which is find a mentor. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me about your amazing journey. Thank you for talking to me about your award and your thoughts on human resources and how important the CHRO is. Thank you also for talking to me about valuation of companies and how you look at it. Thank you for speaking to me again, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Ashutosh. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.